I have the unenviable task of trying to sum up a whole day's worth of papers in 5 minutes, so I'm going to give it my best shot. First of all, I'd like to thank every single person in this room and the ones who've already left. Whether you've presented or whether you've just engaged or whether you've just listened, thank you so much for coming and for taking part in what has been a bit of an experiment, and I think it's gone quite well. How do I sum up everything? Well, for me, one of the most striking things I heard today was the lost story of Alan Begg from Rahin, because for me, that is so representative of this whole discourse. This person who, rather than having their story, rather than having what they say about their own life, what we get is a skull and a piece of paper that, by the sounds of it, was quite considerably about the person who brought the skull back and not actually about Begg. For me, I think that's something that I'm going to take away, and I'm going to think of him every time I do these kind of histories, and I'm going to think, how can I put that story back in? One of the major themes I've seen today has been recognising the humanity of people you may not agree with, you may not share anything with. And for me, that's been hugely important, because I think it's something we all need to remember to do. We need to centre that all the time. This idea of not creating idols, but creating examples, which I think was Tallulah's wonderful words there. The idea that people don't have to be heroes on pedestals or villains in lairs to kind of give you an example of who you could be, or a trait that you might have, or an identity that you might have. And I really enjoyed that idea. We need to understand, as Catherine elucidated, we need to understand the structures and the people that uphold racism, ableism, sexism, homophobia, just as much as we need to understand the people it affects. I think because we need to understand why it happens, how it happens, and how we can break it down. We build our movements, I think, everyone, no matter what your sort of form of activism or social justice or whatever it is you want to call it, whatever it is, we build our movements in the same way. We use the same skills, the same knowledge, all these kind of things. And I think we need to share that. We need to pool that knowledge, and we need to work together in solidarity, because we have so much, we have such rich resources that we can share with each other and build much stronger movements. I think if we do that, if we work together in that way. And I think to do that, we need to take problems and situations that are top down, such as, for example, the racism in the British education system, and look at them from the bottom up. That, to me, was a fascinating way of phrasing that. You know, the problems may not may come from the top, they may come from the state or a structure or an institution that you think is immovable, but to look at them from the bottom up and you see the real effects of them, you see the real dangers, and that's how you can find ways in. You can find ways of navigating them, of learning them, of breaking them down, hopefully. And I think that's something Catherine spoke about. You know, we need to undermine the establishment histories, is what you said. And I really, really enjoyed that. The idea of unpicking the production of history and working out why it's been done, how it's been done, and how we can do it instead. I think James Joyce said that history is a nightmare from which I'm trying to awake. And in many ways it can be, especially if it doesn't feel like it describes you. And I think a lot of people in this room have had that feeling. It sounds like, for a lot of us, it's been a nightmare. I think today, I don't know about you guys, but I finally feel like I've awoken from the nightmare of history. And I hope that what we can do is take these conversations and we can wake other people up too. And we can give them a kind of history that will resonate with them, that will work for them, and that hopefully isn't a nightmare anymore.
So I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the conversations which Claire just brought up, the conversations that we've had today. So what exactly do we do with them? How do we utilise them to bring about change? As interesting, innovative and thought-provoking as they are, I still worry that these conversations will stay within this space, as they often do at some conferences. Everyone is in this room today because they made a choice. They made a choice to be receptive to the ideas of young people, to hear their reflections on history, to hear the histories they want to learn about. But what about those who are not in this room? The conference was sold out, fair enough. There are many people who wanted to be here who couldn't be here today. They had seminars, they had lectures, they had other things to attend. But there are some who don't actually perceive such conferences as important, or even productive. Someone retweeted one of my promotional tweets about this conference saying, "Is this really what academia has come to?" But I do actually want to analyse their disparaging comment by flipping it on its head. Is this what academia has come to? Universities as institutions need undergraduate students to organise such conferences themselves because they are unwilling to engage in these histories. These institutions are often presented as the forebearers and leaders of knowledge, yet they are often behind with what this changing society wants. Many of the older guests in this audience will say, as accurately, that it's always been this way, that universities have always been unreceptive and slow to change, especially as our universities continue to tell our lecturers that they do not matter. So how can they perceive the histories they and we are passionate about as important? So how do we break this cycle, which is clearly has a long history, as Catherine brought up, stemming from the 60s and beyond? Well, in a way, we should continue to do what we are already doing. Many of us recognise that BAME or BME categories are perhaps more problematic than emphasised. We recognise that it is important to include the plus when we talk about the LGBT plus community. We recognise that it is important to ask about your pronouns, to create structures that enable disability access, to use trigger warnings to protect our mental health. And yes, many will call us the snowflake generation for doing so. But this outlook enables us to constantly criticise and challenge the multiple layers of inequality so that we can help make this society fairer, which should always be the aim of every generation, even if it offends people like Piers Morgan. And thus we will be able to write in a way that analyses sexism, which analyses this inequality so that we don't paper over issues such as racism, homophobia, ableism and sexism with this pursuance of diversity. We will continue to support and create initiatives such as the Young Historians Project, such as the Decolonising the Curriculum movement. We will continue to support our striking staff of all positions who fight for a fairer, more inclusive and respectful academic space for future generations. So yes, we can use these initiatives to promote the kinds of conversations we have had today. But one new tool we have as young people is the power of modern media and technology. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn should be recognised as tools for social change along with all their problems, because this is how we can spread knowledge. Yes, we will face criticism, we will make mistakes, but it is more important that people know we have a voice and that voice matters. And make sure you use the hashtag UGHisConference when you do. David Olusoga brought the thinkings of Black British historians to a new stage through his monumental TV series. We need to use these new forms of media and technology to create more accessible forms of history, such as Olusoga's series, so that these conversations are not only had in academic spaces and thus fail to permeate society. During this time of uncertainty regarding Britain's future, it is necessary to reflect on our history in order to improve our understanding of all British people. People need to understand that our history is naturally diverse. It is the way it is written about which isn't. We also need universities to fund more community-led projects where they don't dominate the perspectives but enable communities to explore their ideas and experiences. We need more historians from underrepresented and typically unprivileged backgrounds so that they can contribute to these conversations from their different and important perspectives. This is how we make sure that these conversations stay relevant, that certain individuals who should be in this room today do not wait for us to graduate before reversing or ignoring all of the changes we have campaigned for. I am proud of the discussions we have had today, and I look forward to seeing these words transformed into action. Thank you.